And check it out, you're looking live. President Donald Trump on his way back to Trump Tower as the first full day of his criminal hush money trial wraps. And just moments ago, the former president talked after the trial. He said after spending his day locked inside a Manhattan courtroom, he had some things to say. Today, Trump asked to be excused for his son Barron's high school graduation, but was denied. The judge warning Trump that he could be arrested if he skips out on a day.
That I can't go to my son's graduation, or that I can't go to the United States Supreme Court, that I'm not in Georgia or Florida or North Carolina campaigning like I should be. It's perfect for the radical left Democrats. That's exactly what they want. This is about election interference. That's all it's about.
96 prospective jurors getting sworn in, at least 50 of them dismissed right away because they could not be seen as impartial. And only 18 will eventually remain for the unprecedented first criminal trial of a former president and leading candidate for the White House. Donald Trump will have to be physically in court every single day in a trial that could last until June, which is 1 month before the RNC officially starts. Many legal analysts ripping apart the foundation of the case, arguing that Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg should never have pursued it in the first place.
Everything about this case is, in my view, legally absurd. You know, this case is basically a state misdemeanor that had run out on the statute of limitations. They took a dead misdemeanor and bootstrapped it into effectively trying a federal crime. But the federal crime here under election law was rejected by the Department of Justice. They didn't feel that this should be charged. And it's going to turn on the testimony of people like Michael Cohen. And Michael Cohen just recently had a judge call him a serial perjurer.
Let's get caught up on what everyone thinks about this, starting with you, Judge, if you could give us your take.
First of all, to go off of what Jonathan Turley was saying, the Department of Justice refused to go forward. The Federal Election Commission refused to go forward. Cy Vance, the DA, refused. Alvin Bragg, the DA, refused. And then Mark Pomerantz, who's a mean-spirited individual, decided to write a book, embarrass Alvin Bragg, and Alvin Bragg then brings the charges. Jonathan's right. This is an expired misdemeanor bootstrapped by a federal crime. We don't know what the federal crime is. I don't know what the bill of particulars says. I don't even know why this thing is going forward. But I want to say something, Dana, that I haven't heard anybody say. I was a DA, and the way you bring and try cases is you try them based upon what should go first. In New York State, and I've spoken to several DAs about this, in New York State, people in jail get a priority in terms of timing. A person who's charged with a violent crime gets a priority. So think about the fact that we are backlogged because of COVID. And I'm not talking about the extension because of COVID, of the statute of limitations. But because of the backlog, every major DA's office in New York State is trying cases, violent felony cases from 21 and 2022. They are not trying cases where the defendant is not in jail and where it's not a violent crime. And yet you come to Manhattan, which has 4 times the caseload of the DAs that I spoke with, and they're taking a case out of order where the defendant is not in jail. It's not a violent crime because they want to make sure that they can parade Donald Trump as a convicted felon in front of the American people. And the idea of a speedy trial is not for the prosecution. It's for the defense. And you couple this with the violation, the discovery violation of 30,000 pages of information that they should have had 6 months to review. They gave him 2 weeks. This is all an effort to make sure that Donald Trump does not run for office in a positive way.
And then he gets denied the opportunity to go and see the son's graduation. He can't campaign, and maybe that was part of the plan all along.
You mean to get out of the graduation?
No.
Very, very clever. They're very long and very boring. I think, it would be refreshing to see the other side reframe this honestly. Like last week, Bill Maher was talking about abortion, and he said, it's murder, but I'm okay with it. Yep. You could despise that, but it was honest from a liberal. So it would be nice to hear a Democrat get honest here and say, we get it. This case is bogus, purely political, but we're okay with it, right? We're just trying to bring Trump down or we'll lose the election. Just admit it. Our campaign strategy is to eliminate his campaign strategy. I go back to what I said on Friday about OJ, that travesty of justice. It revealed that what is outside the court matters more than any evidence inside. We saw, 50 of the jurors dismissed out of 96? So the location of the trial, right? If that didn't matter, then why the resistance to move it, and why are you seeing so many people drop out? Because it mattered more than the evidence to the people doing this. What about the biases of the prosecutors, who are obviously actively Democrats? Media didn't want to report, still doesn't report that at all. Why? Because that matters to them more than the evidence. Yeah, this is not a federal crime, expired misdemeanor. The strangest thing about this to me is Michael Cohen being like the lead witness. The person in charge of giving the legal advice to the defendant is a witness to the crime, as well as being the responsible party for the crime. It's like the hospital suing the patient for a surgeon's malpractice. It makes no sense to me. It is incredible. Just because I love how the media is just indulging this, I wonder how many men and women in the media are cheering this hush money charge, have signed non-disclosure agreements, which are exactly the same thing. You paid money not to divulge information to the press. In the last 20 years, the entertainment industry, media, politics have been doling out NDAs like there were Bed Bath & Beyond coupons. So I just find that kind of like, this is not a crime, but it's a hypocritical one when the media thinks it is.
Jesse, did you have a chance to digest all of this today to bring us your brilliant thoughts?
Well, those coupons are great. 50% off sometimes.
But you always leave them at home.
You never bring them.
Yep. You get there, and you realize, and you go, should I go back home?
It's like the bags at the supermarket now that you have to bring, and you never remember to bring, and then they gouge you. What are we talking about again? Alvin Bragg is arguing that Donald Trump should have paid with campaign funds Stormy Daniels and filed it with the FEC. You don't think Alvin Bragg would have charged Donald Trump with the crime for using donor money to pay off Stormy Daniels? He's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. You're not allowed to use campaign money for personal expenses. It is illegal for politicians to spend campaign money on haircuts, plastic surgery, to make themselves look better for the election, golf club memberships, those types of things that make you more appealing before an election. You can't use campaign money for.
Ask George.
Those are personal expenses. What is more personal than your marriage? This is all this is about. This is a personal expense. Bill Clinton, when he was president, paid off Paula Jones. Is Alvin Bragg saying that he should have used donor money for that? Of course not. He used private money because that was a private matter. This is the most corrupt prosecution. The judge, everybody hits on this. This is a guy who ran on getting Donald Trump. He's a Democrat. The judge is a Democrat donor. His family's getting paid by the Biden campaign, got paid by Adam Schiff. And the jury pool's 90% Democrat. And the star witness is a stone-cold felon and a liar. And the jury pool is basically like the OJ jury pool. You're going to have people trying to wiggle into that jury and send a message, just like they did with the juice. Now, Donald Trump's eyeballing all of these prospective jurors, which is the best part. He's like, ultra MAGA. Ultra. And so this is going to be fun to see him kind of like size up these jurors. And the fact that if this judge says he can't attend Barron's high school graduation, he wins in a landslide.
Well, he's already said it because Donald Trump right now is a defendant in a criminal case. He will issue a bench warrant if the defendant does not appear for trial and have him arrested.
Yeah. He'll win California if that happens.
Do you think that any of this, what we are saying here, is crazy?
No,
I think this is one
of the most pathetic, petty, self-harming acts of political suicide I've ever witnessed. Donald Trump should go to his son's graduation. Right? Ooh. Go to the graduation. Honestly, if you're watching President Trump, just go to the graduation. every parent in America, whether they like you or hate you, will go, yeah, I'd have done that too. Because this case is utterly ridiculous. I always thought if this was the one that came up first, there are plenty of reasons to criticize Trump. There are plenty of cases down the line where there's probably a more serious case against him. This is completely nonsensical to me, that you would take a former president of the United States and you would put him in a courtroom over hush money to potentially a one-night stand with a porn star. And if he's found guilty, he may get a 10-year prison sentence. Have you all lost your minds, America? What a demeaning way to treat a former president anyway. But secondly, if you're on the left, why would you think this would possibly work? Why would you not think that what you're doing here is going to almost guarantee Donald Trump wins the next election? The only thing that could absolutely guarantee it is if he's found guilty and put in a prison cell. Because at that moment, Trump wins by a landslide. This is a farcical case. And if anyone on the left is watching this and doesn't agree, you have lost your minds. Take it to the bank.
All right. Hope they can take a telling. That's a good British phrase. I just threw it in there.
Yes.
Indeed.
I just find I don't know why they think this will work.
Do you know that's a phrase?
Never heard that.
Are you kidding?
No.
It is a British phrase. All right.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.